Welcome everyone to a new video. Today we'll be going over rifles and pistols. Before, I have done a melee tutorial. However, today we'll be going over the rest of the weapons in the game by going over rifles and pistols. Keep in mind that there are still a couple weapons I haven't covered and I will be covering in future videos, so stay posted. Thanks for watching, and let's get right into it. Beginning with the naturality of what I'll be doing today, as I'm not going over bows, I will be playing as a colonist. However, in future videos, I do want to play as a native eventually, because generally I want to be able to do some of those videos and also do somewhat a hardcore series of the game that currently is growing at a massive pace. As I've mentioned before, the game is getting very close to full release, and with Jack and Zolve's approval, the game will be out as soon as possible to the public. So at the beginning of this video, I took a bunch of weapons and we'll be walking for a couple minutes doing an overview of what guns are, how much they cost, and other basic analytics. A couple minutes into the video, we'll actually be getting into the guns, testing them, and showing them off to you guys, as I had to do multiple trips or I would be massively over-encumbered, which is basically overweight in the game, because it is a lot of guns in the game, and I can't hold them all in my inventory at once without moving 2 miles an hour. So mentioning two of the most eco-friendly guns is the Charleville and the Kentucky Rifle. The Charleville does slightly less damage than the Kentucky Rifle, however, it is considered more of a militia rifle and is typically a little bit cheaper. The bayonet of it is 185 pounds, and a little bit lower than that if you are going to get a normal rifle that is just a Charlesville. If you are getting a Kentucky Rifle, it is able to also automatically have a bayonet. It costs 250 pounds in any store, and actively what that'll do for you is it's just going to provide more and more cover, and it's more of a military type rifle for the game. It's also the rifle that I'm currently holding in the game. There are three types of guns in the game. There are pistols, there are blunderbusses, which can also be pistols or main guns, and there's also a main gun, which is your primary. It is very important that you get a good secondary alongside your primary, as no primary in the game can one-shot. Exceptionally, if someone is bleeding out in the game, then a few of the guns are one-shots. However, you would need to get a very certain shot and almost maximum damage on these guns to actually have that happen, and oftentimes people do have bandages with them. Whether or not you're in a combat scenario, it will still happen, so I would highly recommend that you get a good secondary with your primary, which I'll be going over later this video, many of the secondaries as well. In a monetary aspect, guns in the game are much more expensive than bows, as to why natives typically have a little bit of an advantage when it comes to making their weapons. However, the difficulty of it is that getting an expensive rifle as a colonist, such as a marksman rifle, which has a very slow reload, costs 750 pounds, but can one-shot if the person that they shoot doesn't have a bandage very easily within 10 seconds of them shooting them. There is kind of that trade-off, where a high-damage gun is available often to the colonist side and not natives. However, natives also have that advantage because in a short period of time of resupplyment, they are able to go back into the battlefield, usually within 10 to 15 minutes of them dying, when a colonist, complete death, has no money left over in their bank or anything, then it could take them up to 30 to 40 minutes to completely resupply, so natives obviously have kind of a resupplyment advantage within the game. Oftentimes going into the blunderbuss class, there is a lot of close combat in the game, however, that is only when two players don't actually see each other. Now, to understand this a little bit more, the game, even on islands, is still very, very large. In general, there's a lot of land, and you're most of the time going to be able to see where the nearest person is coming from, so oftentimes blunderbusses are only if you're going to be building defenses in a cave or blocking yourself in, and having to fight a defensive line and having basically just to defend a certain area. That's the only actual use for a blunderbuss, or a Denix pistol, which is also a different type of blunderbuss, but as a secondary. From this, we were able to determine that the blunderbuss class is used specifically for close combat only, and usually in cave combat, or within scenarios where it's a raid, because oftentimes it is a one-shot for a blunderbuss, and a Denix pistol can do up to 90 damage at close range, so obviously a lot of this is worth it for close combat and raids. But other than that, I would not recommend buying one of these or holding it in your inventory as a spare if you're not specifically going on these missions. Depending on what class of the game you typically want to go into, whether it's military or merchant, then typically you're going to want to understand a little bit more about what you have to do. However, usually guns, as a last resort in the game, are always a form of force, so I will be reviewing them in this video, obviously for multiple reasons. And, of course, as the game will be shortly releasing to the public, I'm not exactly sure when, don't quote me on it, but Jack and Zal, who are the owners of the game, are obviously working very quickly to get it out to you guys as soon as possible, so a little heads up on that as well. As something that I've gone over early in the video, the Kentucky rifle is a weapon that has a large amount of damage to it. It does provide a 2-hit if you naturally are hitting with just one reload and they don't bandage. So obviously it is a decently good gun. It is sold in the general store for £250, and this is considered a military rifle from the game at hand. Both British and the French side both use it pretty actively, as well as the colonists. Sometimes natives will get their hands on this, but of course they prefer bows as they're playing on the native team. Test shotting it, this gun will obviously both perform in a normal military manner by being able to both stab and put on shoulder, and by shooting it is able to shoot a very long range and also will perform well in close quarter combat. Next up, we have a predominant dual pistol to the game. These have 2 barrels, of course, and are able to shoot twice in a very short period of time. It only takes about half a second to be able to shoot both the bullets. With both the bullets being shot, it does between 65 and 70 damage, and from this we're able to determine that it does have a heavy effect on a different player. However, at a decent range, at a medium to high range, this gun becomes decently inaccurate. You're not going to be able to aim this too heavily, so this, of course, like a blunderbuss, is mostly for short range, and if you get very lucky, it will hit a long shot. While testing this gun, it does have an amazing stance when you're being able to fire it, and as firing it, it is obvious just by how I went from tree to tree that it is easy to aim at a short range. At a longer range, it becomes slightly more inaccurate. However, it does do a decent amount of damage and is highly recommended as a side to either the Kentucky rifle, the Charleville, or the blunderbuss if you're going to be using a short-range combat method. Next up, we have the Denix pistol. This is purchased at an illegal dealer in the game, which is found in one of 10 spots on the map, which are currently being determined exactly when the map is fully released to the public what it'll look like. However, the Denix pistol does 90 damage. It is a blunderbuss-like pistol and does not one-shot. However, it can be extremely useful as a secondary if you are preparing for close combat or possibly a rush, as it is a very good secondary to have, with also the possibility of holding a very long-range primary weapon. This could be extremely good for that. Testing the Denix pistol out, it does become extremely obvious that the shot has already spread immediately, much more so than a blunderbuss, meaning it is one of the most inaccurate guns in the game, if not the most inaccurate. And from this we're able to determine that it is very good for close quarter range, doing 90 damage, meaning if they've already taken a melee or a gunshot hit without bandaging themselves completely yet, then you are able to drop them with, of course, the Denix pistol. Moving forwards onto the long pistol. The long pistol, again, is bought by the illegal dealer and is sold in that store for £500. This is not a cheap weapon, however it can be extremely useful and is better than the sharp pistol, which is an accurate pistol in the game. From the long pistol we are able to see that it is, of course, a silver heading to it, which the sharp pistol is a dull silver head and does not do as much damage. The long pistol is estimated to do between 40 and 45 damage, which is 5 to 10 damage more than a sharp pistol in the first place. However, it costs about 10 times the price. So, testing it out, we are obviously able to see how long of a range it actually has, and as a long pistol would expect, it is a very long range hit. So this, assisting a Kentucky rifle or a Charlesville, would be amazing for long range combat, possibly dropping an enemy when it's necessary. Moving forward, we have the Marksman rifle. The Marksman rifle is an extremely useful rifle in the game and is a possible one-shot, as I mentioned earlier in the video. The Marksman rifle costs £750 in the general store, making it the most expensive purchasable gun in the game at the moment. From this, it also takes bullets, which are extremely more valuable than flintlock ammo and as well cost a lot more money, so it is not recommended at any time that you actually buy this. However, it can be extremely useful in a combat scenario if the enemy does not have bandages or you are doing PvP against natives. Typically they won't have as many bandages because they take fur to make, and fur is a lot of value in the game, so typically fighting natives with this weapon would be an extremely useful thing to have for either the British, the French, or the colonist team. The Marksman rifle is such a beautiful class of a rifle. Of course, it has the same range as a long pistol, which can be pretty much up to about 500 studs in what, if you do play Roblox enough, you probably will know. Of course, by testing it, you're able to see how far it does fire, and it is a beautiful, deadly weapon in the game. Of course, it is still extremely expensive, so it is not highly recommended that you buy this in the store if you are starting the game. From this, we move on to the Charleville Rifle. The Charleville Rifle is bought actively in the stores for £160, however, if you would like a bayonet on it, it is also sold in the store for £185 in total for both parts. From this, we are able to determine that it is a decently deadly weapon. It is basically a very slight downgrade from the Kentucky Rifle, however, it can still be very useful in a combat scenario. It is able to stab, but it is not able to shoulder, which is kind of where that downgrade kind of plays in from the Kentucky Rifle. So it is more of a militia rifle and a casual fighting rifle than more of a military stance rifle in the game. From this point, I reloaded the gun and prepared to test it, and as I tested, obviously the bullet does go normal distance. It is slightly more inaccurate than a Kentucky Rifle as well, just to mention, so it is a slight downgrade, however it is on the same level of damage and deadliness within the game, of course, so I do recommend that. And of course I had to have a separate take for the blunderbuss, as it was very difficult to get multiple guns, of course, in my inventory without being able to walk like less than 2 miles an hour to the area that I wanted to go to, so obviously I took another take for this. So the blunderbuss is a very beautiful gun in the game, of course. It has a damage ratio of up to 100% depending on range. It gradually becomes more and more inaccurate. I believe per stud it is 2.5% more inaccurate than when you are normally firing it, at a very short range, of course. So it can one-hit and drop a player immediately if they are not currently bandaging themselves at that time to gain more health, and it will just annihilate an army if there is pretty much everyone on one side at close range with an enemy. This can be an extremely deadly weapon. As proven with the test, it does go extremely well, and just forwards shows an immediate reaction of slight more accuracy than what was shown before, the Denix pistol, and of course isn't a one-shot, but this can be that weapon. So obviously, overall, we do see quite a bit throughout all these rifles and everything that was going on throughout the video. From a mention or two to everything that currently is going on, I thank you guys for watching so much. You're more than welcome to like and subscribe down below. It does help a ton, and obviously is helping our community. A mention back to the rifles, of course, so of the three classes, the rifles, the blunderbusses, and the pistols, things through those, of course, you should have each one. Usually you're able to hold more than one gun in your inventory without going over encumbered, and possibly not even having a Robux knapsack, something that would cost you extra money to get. I would recommend, of course, holding multiple weapons of multiple ammo, and of course, holding at least 20 bandages in your inventory so that you're able to go into a combat scenario. Guns in general are used as a last resort in the game, of course. There is still a lot of diplomacy in this game, there is slight roleplay. Obviously, you want to have fun while playing the game, so obviously going around killing everybody isn't always your best option. As you can meet people in this game, you can make factions, kind of have a family in it, and just have a ton of fun. So be sure to keep that in mind while you're playing the game. Thank you all very, very much for watching. I appreciate it a ton. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below the video. Feel free to go follow us on Twitch @YakerOfficial, or join my Discord, which will be right on the screen, and also in the description of the video if you guys are interested in joining that. Thank you very much, and I'll see you guys next time.